主様。
もしかしてお前
個人で客を取ったりしてませんよ。まだ。
Hi there everyone, Lars back with another review and analysis for the Apothecary Diaries, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And this episode was, again, something I just was not expecting. This episode was really a good concluding chapter to everything that has happened in the past 11 episodes, as well as for setting up where we are about to go in the second core of this season. Specifically, going now into the Outer Palace. We are now going to get involved in way more shenanigans as far as what's been going on with the Imperial family, the Imperial powers, the real power players of the palace who exert their control on the rear palace, and could it potentially be that Maomao wishes to return in order to be a player within these greater schemes? We know that she views herself mostly just as a servant, as a pawn. She's even referred to as a convenient pawn, as a convenient playing piece on the greater board of machinations and imperial power. But could it potentially be so that she and Jinji are doing their own thing to kind of shake things up? And I'm not talking about that they're working in cahoots. It's very clear that they both have different understandings of what's going on and what their relationship is. But I believe that what we're seeing here at the end of this episode is really a massive shake-up moment. And like I said in my last review and analysis, Maomao is no longer just a piece on the board. She is a player at the table. And the reason for that is because, as we see in this episode, she has a clarity of understanding who she is and where she is within this greater world, and her intelligence, her influence, and the connections that she's made, the consequences of her actions, place her now as a woman who can act within the palace rather than as a simple servant who can be acted upon. And while she believes that, yeah, she's just a simple servant for right now, everything that we have seen so far and everything that seems to be getting set up shows to us, the viewers, that she is a player in this greater game. Now, the events of this episode are rather straightforward. It begins with Maomao being let go. She's fired along with 80 other women within the rear palace whose families had connections to Feng Ming. This is honestly very realistic, very historically accurate for imperial powers, and not just for China. Very often, if someone was involved in some sort of grand scheme that targeted the seat of power, everyone who was involved would be punished on some level or another. And this is just a way of cleaning house to make sure that anyone who was a part of this greater scheme is gotten rid of, because the Imperial Palace is smart enough to realize that no one woman alone managed to set up various assassination attempts, deaths, and all this other stuff. That's way too much for just one individual to handle. Other people had to be helping Feng Ming out. And even though Aodo has left the Imperial Palace, what if there is rot somewhere within the rear palace? It needs to be rooted out, so they're going to get rid of all of these women. Maomao is on that list, and not even because she herself is actually directly connected to Feng Ming in any kind of way, but because of her contract. Her contract has people listed on it who are connected to Feng Ming's family, and therefore she must be let go, which is a real problem for Jinji. And yes, he has the opportunity to cover it all up. He has the power to do so, but he misunderstands Maomao, believes that she wants to be let go, and so he does it. Quick pause right here in the quick overview of the episode to talk about misunderstandings. Here's something that novice authors need to understand. It's actually not that difficult to write miscommunication. You just have to take one conversation that is misinterpreted by various personalities. In order to write good miscommunication, you need to understand the characters who are involved within the conversation or the event that leads to this misunderstanding. Everyone is going to view a conversation slightly differently. Even though you're sharing the exact same words with each other, you're talking about the exact same topic, your experiences, your personality, your understanding and relationship with the other person will color their words and your own, and it's very easy, especially if you have a kind of standoff relationship like what we see between Jinji and Maomao, that Jinji could very easily misunderstand Maomao's vagueness as, I'm just a servant and I'm here to serve, and he'd be like, okay then, well, if you're just going to take the role of a servant and you're actually not going to exert yourself as the Maomao that I know, then there's really no reason for me to keep you around. I am going to get rid of you, and this could possibly save you, even though I don't want to do this. And Maomao, because she's afraid that if she tries to prop herself up more than she really is, or more than she views herself to be as a actual power player within the rear palace, her trepidation leads her to acting vague and somewhat standoffish, which is a fault on her own part, and that communicates again to when they see each other at the party and they still are misunderstanding one another, though they are kind of getting to the point where they realize, oh, you didn't actually want to leave. I mean, they're getting there, but miscommunication, it is a real wrecker in real life, and honestly, it's a lot of fun to write into your stories. I myself do enjoy writing in miscommunication. One of the reasons, though, why plenty of people don't really tease out miscommunication very far within certain stories is because it does tend to have long-reaching consequences if you write it realistically. A good example of this is The Wheel of Time. So many plot points within a 13-book series happen because of miscommunication. And Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson did a brilliant job of playing all of that out in the long run. A lot of those misconceptions could have been easily solved or could have been written away with a dash of the pen, but they didn't do that. And by doing so, it made the characters feel way more realistic. The thing, though, is that then it requires you as the author to come back again and again and again and make sure that your characters are still laboring under certain misconceptions, which will again skew their actions and makes things muddled for the plot. It can be very frustrating to write, and it can be very frustrating to read or to watch. And because so many authors actually want to avoid that kind of frustration, they then avoid miscommunications, or they try to quickly wrap it up within like an episode or a chapter or two. And doing that actually deprives you of a lot of fun that you can have with that miscommunication, plus it also deprives the characters of good chances for character development, like what we see here in this episode. So coming back to the brief overview of the events. Maomao is ejected from the rear palace, she goes back home, and she has a debt to the brothel. The madame immediately puts her to work, again, not just simply whipping up all kinds of medicines for the ladies who work there as courtesans, but also now as a part-time courtesan herself who is being groomed to be this incredible exotic beauty to give off to the various men. She is even specially requested to go to a large shindig party. Someone within the palace dropped tons of money to bring in all of the princesses of this brothel in order to just have a great time at this party. That is where Maomao reunites with Jinji, and they have a somewhat drunken conversation, with mostly Jinji being the drunk one, and them realizing that they've not really understood each other. And this is actually great character development because characters need to have a time after a misunderstanding to then realize that they don't fully understand each other, and that the basis of that misunderstanding was not just one conversation, but that they don't understand each other on a more fundamental level. You then have a moment of honesty between Maomao and Jinji, which is very important to their relationship, and very important to both of them opening up and realizing that, well, I was wrong, which is a good step. It's a big step for a character to take. And for Maomao to realize that she actually does want to go back to the palace. This is indeed her life back in the brothel in the red light district with her father and everything, but now that she's had a taste of all of these experiences within the rear palace, with imperial power, with these incredible women, she's helped them out in all of these different situations, she has formed lasting relationships, and she can feel like she absolutely belongs. Even though she views herself as just simply a servant and a poison tester, it is very clear that her skills, her knowledge, her ability to observe, and her ability to form certain connections with people, those are things that she actually really enjoys doing, and she can only truly employ that to her heart's content back in the rear palace, back at the seat of power. And so she is willing to engage on a conversation with Jinji about returning, to which then Jinji later returns and buys out her contract from the palace, or from the brothel, in order to bring her back to the palace. This sequence of events is very important because this again highlights the interesting contradiction of the political game and the game of women's power and identity that Maomao has been playing ever since episode 1. Maomao does want to return to the palace. Even though she can't quite put it really into words in this episode, it's where she can be herself. She understands the game at this point. And while she likes being with her father and she gets along with the women in the brothel, she has a place to be. That's not the destiny that she wants to craft for herself. She has way more autonomy playing the games of the rear palace. If only she could go back. But doing so means putting her neck out there once again, and it means leaving her family once again and going back into a world that is fairly dangerous. What then do you choose? And normally Maomao should be the person who is empowered to make that decision, but that decision is taken away from her by Jinji buying out her contract and taking her back to the palace. We know that this is what she wants. However, it's not happening according to her own power or choice. So again, here we have these contradictions. This is the game. This is the garden. This is the cage, in her own words. And within the parameters of this game, of this garden, of this cage, there are rules that she must abide by. But if you know how to play the game, you can craft for yourself power, identity, and autonomy, just like many of the other women have. So from this point on, going forward into the Apothecary Diaries, it's going to be very interesting to see how Maomao is challenged as an individual. Her character progression up until this point has been to be more honest with herself, to understand herself better, and to seize the opportunities to be an independent, autonomous, powerful woman within the parameters of her society. She has obtained that, but now by being taken back into the palace and now being potentially integrated into the outer palace, beyond the rear palace, she might be given opportunities to go beyond her normal confines, which means she'll now be rubbing shoulders with even more powerful individuals who'll be expecting other things and even more things of her, and who could very easily see her as an enemy. All of what she has achieved for herself will now be challenged. And that is actually a really great thing to do with a character. Too many authors, and I've seen this happen way too often, even from professional authors, a character achieves a certain point, a certain ending that they had envisioned for this character arc. And when that happens, their character then just remains that person until the end of the book. And this can be really egregious sometimes with side characters, where a side character manages to complete their character arc halfway through the series, and they still play a role, but it's very clear that this character isn't being challenged and isn't growing in any kind of way until the end, and so they're just there. And that gets really boring and really frustrating, especially if you like that character, because we want to see our characters continually progress. So a good thing to do, it's good to have these culmination moments for your character where a specific arc of development has been achieved. You should have this for your main characters and for your side characters, but they cannot just end there. They need to continuously be challenged until the very end of the story. Maomao has had her first big character arc, but from here, she will now continuously be challenged in brand new ways. And it's going to be very interesting to see how she grows as an individual. Now, where do we go from here? I don't have a clue, because I haven't read the manga. So I'm going to continuously be discovering this as we go along. But I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to continuously cover this series as it premieres. However, as we go into the new year, into 2024, there are going to be some anime in this upcoming season that I will also be reviewing as well. I'm going to be returning to The Dangers in My Heart. This is a rom-com that I've absolutely enjoyed reading and watching. It is, I think, just a very brilliantly done story, especially for redeeming a character who's despicable and transforming him into a character who's very relatable and very good, and also showing how you can take a character who we would normally see as a bit of a bimbo, the main female character, and showing how she has great depth to herself and how she is more than just the love interest, but she is a very powerful contributing character within the overall plot who helps drive the plot forward. And that's something that we don't see a whole lot in a lot of rom-coms. So, man, I'm so excited to return to that, as well as look at some new shows that are coming on out. So, I will continue covering the Apothecary Diaries, but there's going to be more anime goodness, more reviews and analyses along the way in the new year, as well as other videos that we'll be doing. And I hope that you continue to join us for this incredible adventure through these amazing stories and through this journey that we call writing. Thank you so much for being a part of this adventure in this past year and for this last season of the of anime of 2024. It's been fantastic looking at the Apothecary Diaries with you guys, and thank you so much for all of your comments, your encouragement, your insights. You've helped me learn and grow a whole lot, so thank you so much. And until the next video, y'all, choose.
指先だけですよ。こいつ映るじゃないか。あんたの客だよ。確実に売り飛ばされる。